All right. So the first thing we want to do is talk about the problems that the DAOs are having today, right? The very clear thing, slide. Decentralization is disorganized, right? You know, talent turns away when they see, like, I have no clue what's going on here. If you are really good and valuable at what you do, you have tons of options. Why are you going to sit through this thing where to pass a proposal, you have to be a salesperson on top of whatever it is that you're building, and you have to risk reputational damage? Like, it's not fun exactly, right? Like, we're not there yet where governance is fun. And these circles of influence form. It's just totally frustrating to understand how that works. And sometimes we just get a bunch of administration happening. Next is this disorganization causes strategy misalignment. Understood. So with the strategy misalignment, we just can't agree where we should focus our energy, get positive sum alignment. So people's autonomy is reduced because they're not sure if they should do that. Then people go and work in silos, and we're not building together and truly collaborating, which I think is the point of the DAOs, is to get to that real collaboration with positive sum outcomes. There we go. All right, so what happens because of that? Well, what we do is we realize, oh, this isn't working, we're too disorganized, we don't have any strategy. So someone has to centralize. Thanks, T-Norm, by the way, for this meme. And when it centralizes, we get reduced voter turnout, there's less innovation happening, and overall it becomes less accessible and neutral, which is kind of the prime qualities of a digital public infrastructure that's neutral, that's not gonna rug you under what you built. So the last piece of this is that you can't assess the value here. The valuation of the work isn't consistent, right? So people end up putting in effort, they don't know if the proposal is gonna pass, they work for free. The assessment is just kind of hearsay. Somebody says something, everybody's like, oh, he put in the time, I guess that's right. You can't really attract the top talent, again, and there's more and more noise and less signal. When the assessment is poor quality, the scammers are gonna come. So we need to fix this, right? And I've been using these buzzwords. I like to say framework just to piss certain people off. It's like to rile things up. But actually, I think it's a useful thing. Right? So here's a pluralist grant framework. I want to give you an actual shape to the container that we're talking about so you know where your proposal fits in as you build it. We have different types of incentives. Imagine this is like a city that we're building, right? User incentives or liquidity incentives is like paying people's first month rent so they'll come and move into your city. Product market fit bets. These are builders building protocols and dApps, right? This is subsidizing the entrepreneurial risk for entrepreneurs building gas stations and grocery stores, right? You need some businesses around to make that a lively community. The service providers, you're gonna contract out to a sanitation service. Who gets that contract? How do they get that contract? There's the operations of the DAO. Who works in City Hall handling the contracts with the service providers? The events, comms, education, marketing. How do we get the word out there and make sure people know that we're offering the first month's rent and we have subsidies to businesses, and how to register as an approved service provider, and how to get a job at City Hall? And then last is the open source infrastructure. These are the roads, the electric, the plumbing that our city's built on, that we depend on, and there's not really a business model to fund this. So if you think about this, you have these levels of participation that people should be able to go through, and then there's these different functions. So when we think about like level one, what is that? Well, from a contributor's point of view, they want to minimize the friction. I want to go and see what I can do and show you my value today. And then I want you to pay me for 2 days, and I'm going to show you what I can do in 2 days. And then I want you to pay me for 4 days, and I'll show you what I can do. That's the world we're trying to create, is where people who were gatekept before by stupid things like, I don't have enough time to review 100 applications. so I'm gonna make a requirement of like a college degree, which cuts out like 80% of people just to save me the time so I can review 20. Not a great way to select things. Decentralized systems should be better. We're also gotta minimize the risk to the DAO. You're not throwing money with no requirements to just anybody who comes along. So at each level and each different function, the way that you minimize friction and minimize the risk to the DAO is gonna be different. In the middle, we really just need to think what are the requirements at each level to increase odds of success. For example, in Helica Gaming's framework with the Gaming Catalyst, at level 3 of their framework, they said your game must have A/B testing software installed. If you don't have that, we know that you do not have the tools to be successful at this level, and therefore you cannot get this money. Right? Pretty clear, easy to understand. At the end, we have to have the thing, I like to think of it with like the example of the leprechaun, because everybody like understands this, right? There's gotta be a pot of gold at the end for anybody to start walking the path. Nobody gives a shit about walking over a rainbow. You never hear anybody talking about walking across a rainbow unless they're talking about a pot of gold at the end, right? So nobody gets on the path or starts unless there's something for them at the end. Now, a complexity of this is that it's actually a three-dimensional thing because there's also verticals. So the way that you minimize friction for gaming at the start might be different from DeFi versus enterprise. And we have to think about that. But for today, we're gonna keep it really simple. I'm gonna show you how some proposals fit into the framework so you can understand how what you're designing will fit into this framework as well. STIP, 50 million user incentives in the back fund and so forth. We almost jumped straight to like level 4 or 5, like we're gonna give you all the money here. There's no leveling up, but sometimes we do have to skip people ahead. There's gonna be some people with credentials and expertise, and there's just gonna be the market around us that we have no choice but to keep up. So sometimes we do have to make some suboptimal decisions, but we should understand that we're doing it. We need to know where we are on the pathway. Questbook, their new protocols program. So Questbook is a program provider that funded 4 programs, each with a domain allocator, and they funded product market fit bets at kind of a level 1 or 2, you would say. For the community and education, the Questbook program funded events, comms, marketing at level 1, level 2. Plurality Labs, we funded the RNDAO program with the fellowship. You might say that they're kind of a different way of going at the early stages of product market fit bets. Our Firestarter program, people love that one. Why did they love it? Because no matter how you were trying to get involved in the DAO, there was a way for you to start, right? There was a first step. Our Open Data program, one of our lesser known programs that's out there, but right now there's a permissionless suggestion box using HATS protocol, and anybody can put in a request for a data analysis, and top data scientists will come and compete to do this. It's kind of the open source infrastructure that we're building, a level 1 and level 2 way to get involved. If you're a data scientist, you can go there and get a bounty. Our GovBoost program worked on DAO operations in open source, and we had all the way up to like the grant ships program, which is for the meta allocation of how do we put on-chain the decision of how we fund between these different things. You know, we had 150K Arb there. That was like a level 3 bet. That wasn't 10K, right? But we knew it was a core problem to the system that we had to solve. Elo and Arbitrum Hackathon. Everything that came out of there, on-chain milestone payments, retro funding things, there's direct grant programs, crowdfunding solutions, review tools using AI. All 530 protocols on Arbitrum now, when they're thinking about how to fund their community, the tool's built for them now. They can do all those things, right? The Gitcoin matching round, it was really getting a lot of people to come to the ecosystem, and it kind of on the side funded open source. And it worked really well, by the way. The citizen retro funding went and made sure people knew about how they could get started here. So as we think about these, there's pathways, right? Pathways are leveling up to get that pot of gold at the end. And then there's strategies. These might equate to like work streams or working groups in the future. But you're not just saying, I'm going to build that pathway. I'm talking to Daniel from our NDAO and Matt with the EVM fund, and it was like, wait, Daniel, you're sitting at level 1 and 2 in product market fit bets. What they're offering is sitting at kind of level 3, 4, and even 5 potentially. And Daniel said, well, part of what we need is actually some operational costs, and we might need some technical infrastructure to support it. So we actually need some funds for here, some funds to get the word out so people know about the program. And so he was like, we're not just in here. And I said, well, really, you are just in here. There's just nobody that can help you with this. So you know you have to take that on yourself, right? So when you build out a strategy or a working group, you might bring a bunch of different programs together that in total will gear us to actually get to an outcome. So if you're betting on builders and you're gonna make a strategy, you might have to collaborate with 5 or 6 other people who are putting in proposals. And maybe you put them in together, maybe you put them one by one. But if you can articulate the strategy by showing the shared reference of how we shape it, it will be beneficial to you. So the principles are that we minimize the friction for the contributor, they get paid from day one, they showcase their work, and we provide the pathway of success. For the DAO, we're de-risking at every level. We're setting useful requirements that, like I said about them having A/B testing software, that's not just good for us to de-risk, that's good for the project. We're creating a better conversation overall, and one of the key components is that we have to decentralize evaluation, and that doesn't exist yet. So there are some issues here. And that's really where Plurality Labs, and now we're fully merging in with Thrive Protocol. You guys hired us, Arbitrum hired us to kind of be that trusted group of experts who can evaluate some grants and get some funding moving. But to decentralize it, we need to move that from the service layer through some technology that scales our access to it to a protocol. Thrive Protocol is the protocol that enables that trust, that you'll get the outcome you expected when you put some money in. Just like in Ethereum, when you trade a digital asset for compute, you reliably get the compute you were expecting, but we don't have that with hiring people and labor for the DAOs in decentralization. Until we have that protocol, you need a service provider like us who ends up being a centralized entity. There's no way for us to get around it right now. So that's why we're building that part. And we invite you guys to focus anywhere you want. And we'll support you in getting a proposal passed, or we'll show you, hey, you know what, there's already 2, 3 initiatives going on there. It's great to have a plurality of things competing, a few different things for product market fit bets at a level. That's fine. So somebody has to review, and we don't want it to be just one person delegated authority or a council. We want it to actually be decentralized where the community does it. And why? Because we need to remove the single points of failure. Right? This is what decentralized systems do. And one person's pretty corruptible, but if you think like a council isn't, I will invite you to look at the financial crisis of 2008, where the clearinghouses were bought out. And that's without the infrastructure and technology that they can do it with a dark DAO. So we need to solve this, right? It's an existential problem. So who's reviewing at each level, where it's at, as the stakes get higher, as the money gets higher, as the risk is higher? So without a decentralized evaluations, we don't know if the delegated authority is neutral, and there's always a bribe amount that is worth it. When we decentralize that, we fix this. We go from being disorganized, misaligned, centralizing because we have no other option, and completely unable to assess if these things are really important to us, and making the future that we're all sitting in this room trying to build. Instead, we go to a world where we can thrive is one where we mobilize this community, we coordinate through the framework to enable different projects like our NDAO's fellowship to move into EVM Fund Accelerator and then Incubator, and then maybe a co-run fund owned by the DAO that's funding once they get to level 5, that's giving people the pot of gold And it's okay, because it's not just financial incentives that this is about. Because as you do your civic duty and review other grants in a very simple format, you can get rewarded for that, and you can level up in the Dow. And you're going to want to show that off and flex that a little bit, because what we're doing is rewarding you with something that's more intrinsically meaningful than just like the dollar, right? You want to show you're a good part of the ecosystem. You want to show how much you've done to help other people. And you should get both the reward and the recognition, right? So that's it. If you need any help putting your proposal into the framework and understanding a good way to communicate it with the rest of the people here, this is the framework we were assigned to deliver, along with delivering all the grant programs. We had to throw it out there to understand what it was, and this is what's manifesting from it. So thank you.